Chapter 1, Part 1. Our nightmare begins in the rain. Wednesday, April 1, 1964. 3:10 p.m. after school. It was chilly and rainy after school in the afternoon. 12-year-old Angela Harris, her older brother Tommy, her younger brother Jerome, and younger sister Linda's school day has ended. Goliath and the Vampires, starring Gordon Scott, was playing at the Met at North and Pennsylvania Avenue on the number 13 bus line. In 1964, movies were double features and changed weekly on Wednesdays. This feature was no different. The second feature was a Hollywood low-budget exploitation movie based on the killer out of Boston, Albert DeSalvo, the real Boston Strangler. The Strangler, starring Victor Bono, was the second feature. It was not a rarity for kids and parents to go to a movie after school. In 1964, many Negro families had no TV or phone at home. Home entertainment consisted mostly of reading, cards, and board games, like Monopoly. Angela's family was no different. So, a weekly double feature with kids under 12 ticket prices being 10 cents and 25 cents for adults, and a large popcorn for a quarter, 10-cent large Coke, and 15-cent hot dogs made a middle of the week and after school outing for several neighborhood families. Angela's family was one of those weekly family, mom and kids, ritual outings. "Hey Ma, can I have an extra chicken breast and mashed taters at dinner?" Tommy shouts across the living room to his mother in the kitchen, cooking dinner after rushing home in the rain from their movie outing. His mother snickers and shouts in response, "If your daddy don't want extras, you know that's his favorite. We got plenty mashed taters, wings, and back." Then, from the kitchen, it can be heard the tap-tap sound of her potato masher rapping against the edge of a full-sounding metal pot to shake loose the thick and lumpy mashed fried chicken companion. The dinner completes itself with a side of succotash, gravy, and biscuits, and the Negro family's favorite dinner drink next to really sweet and sour lemonade was grape Kool-Aid, so sweet you would see unmelted sugar at the bottom of the pitcher. And dessert is sweet tater pie. Wednesday night for a lot of Negro families was like a smaller version of Sunday dinner. Thursday night would be leftovers from Wednesday, like Monday night is from Sunday dinner. There was no such thing as you do not eat leftovers. You ate what was in front of you, all of it. Friday and Saturday night would be fish or hot dogs and beans, or sliced at a deli in the Lafayette vendor market on Pennsylvania Avenue, where our favorite lunch meat and cheese was fresh sliced and sold by weight for our sandwiches. Saturday might be spaghetti and meatballs or Chinese food. If there was a pizzeria in the neighborhood, we might have a pie. Pizza was called a pie or pizza pie. Pizzerias weren't plentiful in 1964, and definitely not in colored neighborhoods. Our family allies were developed around the dinners we ate and conversations we had. Unlike today, families sat down and ate together and talked in a dining room or a designated area. And almost all of our families said grace before eating, regardless of religious preference, short of being an atheist. Honestly, I never met one until I was an adult in the 1980s. Helen Harris was still wearing her plaid, below-the-knee casual dress she wore before meeting her kids and taking them to an afternoon matinee of Goliath and the Vampires, and the Strangler as a second feature. After the movies, she rushed to get dinner started. So, she never changed her clothes. She just tied on a dim yellow waist apron with two deep large pockets. But she likes being barefoot indoors. That was her mom thing. Helen was happily close to finishing cooking the family dinner. As called in 1964 without it being an insult, Helen was known as a housewife. And she loved it. Her husband George drives a diamond cab from 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. 6 days a week. Helen, the proverbial housewife, takes care of her 4 children and her hard-working Gunther or Natty Bo beer. Natty Bo, or National Bohemian Beer, was first brewed in Maryland in 1885. The iconic hometown beer was purchased by Pabst Brewing Company in the 1990s and is still going strong today. Their motto is live pleasantly, and they view their brew as a compliment to the laid-back and carefree lifestyle of Charm City locales. National Bohemian Beer proudly offers 4 different varieties, including Original, Day Beer, Bohem, Goth, and Take It to the House. Beer-drinking, avid Baltimore Orioles fan. Husband. Her husband, George, who while waiting for dinner is playing Tom. It's a card game with his oldest child, Tommy, and having a church kite preaching session about the 1964 Orioles baseball season. His youngest son, Jerome, is in the kitchen with his mother. He's Mommy's favorite. Tommy and his dad, George, almost never missed an Oriole night game while sitting in the colored section at Memorial Stadium. Being a Balmer Orioles fan was like religion. You may get by saying you weren't a fan of Johnny Unitas, Lemmy Moore, and the Baltimore Colts, but never, never, never the Baltimore Orioles. Helen's 2 daughters, Angela and Linda, are in the living room of their small 3-bedroom duplex home on North Avenue in the Junction. They are listening to the final hour of the Hot Rod Show while anxiously waiting for the Sir Johnny O Show on WWWIN Radio. All of the young Negro girls loved Sir Johnny O because of his rap. Rap in 1964 just meant smooth talk. His rap on air was like silk. The 2 young girls are dancing and singing horribly out of tune to the Marvelettes' hit song, Please, Mr. Postman. The sound of the rain slamming wind blown against the windows and side of the house and dancing on the rooftop sounds almost foreboding. It is a normal, chilly, rainy April night before school, and the family is happy together, unknowingly for their last time. This April 1's night will not be a night of practical jokes. It is 10:40 p.m. The Harris family has gone to bed for the night. The rainstorm has succumbed to a near silent drizzle. Tommy and his younger brother Jerome are sound asleep in their shared bedroom bunk beds, and being asleep is true for Angela and her baby sister, Linda. The house is seemingly darker than usual, and so quiet the silence seems to scream at you until it gives you goose pimples and a tingling feeling on the back of your neck where the tiny hairs party and dance, just to mess with you with a tickle. In the silence and darkness of the Harris's small 3-bedroom duplex home, where Tommy and Jerome share a bedroom and Angela and her sister Linda share a slightly smaller bedroom with girly decor and twin beds with frills on their quilted bedspreads, custom made for them by Grandma Christmas. 1961. Grandma Mao told younger Linda that the heavy coat would protect her from the shadowy boogeyman. Grandma Mao inadvertently lied to her grandbaby. Too bad. Along the walls of their upstairs hallway is a screaming, loud silence of a huge shadow moving slow and foreboding along the walls. The house does not have wall-to-wall carpet, just slippery throw rugs on a cold, creaky wooden floor, where splitters have on several occasions assaulted the feet of each family member, Helen most of all. Helen grew up outside of Leonardtown in St. Mary's County, Maryland, which is south of Baltimore and southeast of Washington, D.C. She grew up on a farm in a segregated and highly dangerous location for black people who owned many acres of land that was once sharecropped by a couple of generations of her family, that only had 2 generations free from the legacy of slavery. Maryland was a slave state. As a child, She witnessed the aftermath of a lynching and cross burnings on her family's land by the Ku Klux Klan. Helen learned to go barefoot running to hide if needed in the fields of tobacco, corn, and cotton her family grew as crops. So adult mommy Helen likes being barefoot. The upstairs hallway window curtains are whisking in and out of the fully open window that looks like it's taking deep in and out, cleansing breaths that minutes earlier was closed. It's 1964, and one day their duplex home will be BG and E, currently is coal. It does not last very long when cool or cold air is whipping around an already hard to heat, poorly insulated 40-plus year home. But the Harris home is still eerily silent outside of the mild snapping curtains. A few yards away from the open hallway window is the closed white painted door to Angela and Linda's bedroom. On the other side of that white painted door, in a darkened bedroom aside from the illumination coming from a blue night light plugged directly into a wall socket between the beds of the pretty girl siblings, is a tall, thick build of what appears to be a man dressed in all black clothing with a hooded jacket obscuring his face behind blackness. This hooded person is a monster. In the silent, blue-lit room above the stuffy nose breathing of Angela is the shallow breathing of an ominous intruder who likely entered through an unlocked back door to the Harris home and moving silently through a second-floor hallway. Many Negro families, especially ones who migrated from the country, left a door unlocked, especially if they had kids to lose keys. It was dangerous then and suicidal now. The figure is silently standing between the beds of Angela and Linda and making hand gestures of the obvious. He is deciding using eeny, meeny, munty, mo as his decision-making process. His long black leather-gloved finger ends on the seasonal allergy, clogged sinuses, 12-year-old who will never feel the joy of turning 13 and becoming an official teenager in another month. She will be his first kidnap kill. Her last hours in this plane of existence will be impious cugonia, Latin for ungodly agony. He reaches down to cover her face with his superior strength and renders her quickly unconscious, never making a disrupting sound. Then, as silently as he entered the family home, he was gone, never to return. But her 6-year-old sister was left behind, but slaughtered like a pig in a butcher shop. She was hacked to death with a butcher's meat cleaver. She had no face left. He hacked her face and upper body parts more than 200 times. She looked like bloody jellied cranberry sauce. 6-year-old Linda never woke up from the nighttime dream of an innocent and precious child. Thank God, she died in her sleep. The next morning, each member of the family was at a high threat level. Someone came into their house and killed Linda and took Angela. They knew whatever was going on. They were adamant Angela never left their home on her own. And Tommy did not kill his baby sister. The police officers, both who could give a damn about a missing colored girl child or a murdered one they think is a family murder and cover-up, took a half-ass report marking it up as she ran away to be with a boyfriend, but most likely raped by her older brother, and the younger sister threatened to tell. The boy had no impulse control, so he murdered her. One of the police officers, who the parents sent Angela away to hide .asa popping bazooka bubblegum, the entire time told George that he needed to go to the district station house in 72 hours to file a missing person report if she was not back by then. Homicide would be out to question them about Linda, and the coroner's wagon would be out for the body. The next 3 days for Angela's family was agonizing. Their second-born is missing. For Angela, the word agonizing hits a level the 12-year-old in her worst nightmares could not imagine. Angela has met the boogeyman, and he is out of the closet. It is 2:47 a.m. Angela is conscious and in indescribable pain. She has been repeatedly raped beaten, and tortured. Even though Angela is only 12, she knows her death is imminent. She knows from the savagery of the mysterious, hulking, strange man towering above her wet and cold nude body. She is sprawled in the wet, muddy, leafy turf he tossed her onto like a bag of garbage. Angela has no idea where she is. It smells damp and moldy or musty. She hears a loud, echoey sound that is akin to when the family went to Carr's Beach last summer, and she picked up and listened to the hollowness of clam and oyster shells. Carr's Beach was the only beach Negroes could enjoy without going hours to New York's Coney Island. Angela doesn't know that sound is wind bellowing in and out of caves behind spilling waterfalls. She just knows she is scared more than she ever knew. She's just a 12-year-old child who has not had time to bring grief and strife to the world. Angela silently prays to God to end her pain. God either does not care about her pain or is not listening, while the stranger viciously kicks and stomps on her pretty face, breaking her nose and knocking out or snapping all her front teeth. It nearly causes her to lose consciousness until he grabs her around the throat with both hands and squeezes until her eyes bulge and spittle drips from her mouth corners. With a raspy voice from south of hell, he shouts at her with a southern drawl. An undereducated one, he shouts,
"Get y'all nigger ass up, y'all stinking nigga. Y'all ain't dead yet, bitch. Y'all gonna make me peel y'all's nigga skin off y'all's ugly ass."
Angela has very little life spark left, but it is still enough for her to continue to suffer. He straddles her and begins punching her with extreme savagery in what is left of her brutalized face with an unparalleled amount of racial hate. Then he stands and says, while pissing on her,
"I'm gonna fuck y'all's little nigga asshole till it bleeds, bitch. Hates niggas, and I hates y'all, bitch."
Then he flips her near limp body face first into the wet mud, twigs, and leaves. Then with a vicious hate for a child simply because of her race, he forcibly rapes her anally while using his claw-like fingernails to claw hunks of flesh from her back. Once he is done, he rolls her onto her back. Then he lifts her legs spread apart and orally with his sharp, jagged teeth he begins to bite, chew, and rip at her genitalia until nothing is left but bloody, jagged flesh. Angela does not have enough life left in her to do more than make a pitiful-sounding moan in place of mournful screams. Sadly, a stream of silent tears rolls from the corners of her eyes. Not from pain or fear, but from a feeling of abandonment by the men she loves most. Her father, George, and God. Neither protected her from her suffering. Her perception is all wrong. Her father, George, would have given his life in exchange for hers, if only he could. And God. God showed his love just that second by pulling the life from her body to spare her from the worst to come. God is a perception of belief, and Angela was raised to believe and never had a long enough life experience to change her mind. So, if heaven exists, the gates are open wide for her soul to pass unopposed. The stranger stops his oral rape and circumcision, unaware that there is no life left in Angela's body while using a classic knife hand position. Along with his sharp, claw-like fingernails, he shoves his hand deep into Angela's abdomen. Then using his opposite hand as an aid, he rips apart a hole and pulls her innards partially outside of her body, hanging through a gaping hole. Then, the still faceless, menacing stranger stands and reaches for a metal iron in a tent-covered flame to reveal a branding iron with a burning red-hot letter K that he uses to burn the letter into Angela's flesh. It smokes and sizzles under the light rain and wind. The stranger looks down at Angela's lifeless body and, with hate as his only emotion, laughs. Then he lifts her and places an already in place noose around her neck, and then he pulls the rope to let Angela dangle from a tree. Her dead eyes are bulged, and her tongue sticks from her mouth between bloated cheeks. He steps back like an artist, admiring his work. Then he continues to laugh wickedly while walking away deeper into the woods around Jones Falls. Chapter 1, Part 2. Terror in the Woods. Friday, April 10, 1964. 1:47 p.m. The past 10 days and nights for the Harris family, including grandmama, aunts, and uncles on both sides of the family, have been torturous. George and Helen filed a missing person report on Angela rapidly after the 3-day wait period was up. Since then, it's been family together for support, along with hopes and prayers. Day 10 is no different, only more desperation and short of standing on faith alone to keep them going over a wall of hopelessness. The family is gathered at the Harris home like a wake. The sadness in the air was so thick it was suffocating. Linda has been murdered in her bed, and Angela is gone, and everyone knows Angela would never be a runaway. She has been abducted by a maniac, and they know it. The Harrises, being a church-going Baptist family, are gathered together with their church pastor to pray for Angela's safe passage home from whatever evil has besieged the family and taken her and Linda from them. Suddenly, their front doorbell rang. It was 2 plainclothes detectives. Their faces looked grim, like they were harbingers of dreadful news. They were. George Harris invites them in, and they go into the living room where the family and church pastor are gathered to pray. It's been 10 days since Angela's disappearance. George informs the detectives after rapid introductions that any news was okay to give in front of them. They are a tight-knit family, and each of them loves his little girl, Angela. A tall detective in a wrinkled, light gray suit looks squarely into the mournful red eyes of George and Helen and says with moderate sincerity, "Mr. and Mrs. Harris, we really hope our information doesn't apply to you, but the deceased body of a young girl about the age of your missing daughter has been found." Helen Harris grabs at her chest and screeches, "Oh my God, no. Please, God, please not my baby. Lord, not Angela." The second detective quickly interjects, "Wait, Detective O'Brien isn't saying that body found is your daughter. The deceased is a Negro girl, probably between the ages of 10 and 15, and your daughter is in that age range. We're here to take you to and from the coroner's office downtown to make an identification." Detective O'Brien steps in and adds, "Unfortunately, your daughter ain't the only colored girl missing. So, it's a good chance it ain't your daughter. Can we go down there this afternoon?" What Detective O'Brien said gives the family a minuscule amount of hope. No matter how little, it's hope just the same. The solace of emotions under the roof of the crowded Harris home is disrupted by a very loud boom of thunder and a sudden downpour of rain and flash of lightning blinking through the closed windows. Inside, total silence prevails except for the pastor holding the hands of George and Helen while they kneel in front of him in his shiny black patent leather shoes and royal blue shark skin suit. He speaks with an overzealous, over-exaggerated prayer voice while vying for an all-eyes-on-me type of attention use of body motion, while he raises their hands high above them and shakes his very black and shiny processed hair around like a black Elvis with palsy, shaking long strands of hair that hang on his forehead while he tilts his head to the sky and talks with an overemphasis, out of nowhere Southern accent from the cotton fields of slave misery, like so many Negro Christian preachers do. Preaching is a performance ahead of the money grab. But for George and Helen, it was simply begging their Christian God for the life of their missing daughter, who they love infinitely. It is late afternoon, Friday, April 10, 1964. In a few hours, the sun will be gone from view in the east, and it is raining. For the unaware Negro children in Baltimore, death walks in the rain, and he is the devil on earth. Friday, April 10, 1964, 10:11 p.m. Harold Bethel, 12, Sheila Bethel, 15, and Gerald Bethel, 19, are walking home from the Royal Theater on Pennsylvania Avenue. They live in a 3-bedroom apartment with their 37-years-old, who looks 30 years old, mother, Joyce Bethel, who is a single parent. Hard at work at the Spinix nightclub on the avenue as a bartender until 2:30 a.m. every Monday through Saturday night. Sunday is her only quality time to spend with her children, and she chooses it over sleep time every week. The nightclub is a few doors away from the widely known Lenox Theater, for it's always 3 movie features instead of 2, and the SPHINX Club is 6 blocks from the famous Royal Theater, where her older son Gerald took his younger siblings to see their first Live on By Thee concert, featuring James Brown and his famous Flames. The concert was MC IWSID's King Fat Daddy and WWIN's Kelson Chop Chop Fisher and WEBB's Rockin' Robin. In the days of segregated Jim Crow Baltimore, Black R&B concerts would be held at the Royal Theater. Negroes, unless working, were not openly welcome in downtown Baltimore to the Civic Center or Lyric Theater. The family lives on Utah Place, near the intersection of Utah Place and Robert Street, where Gerald liked to shoot craps in the alley, next to the Naughty Pine Bar on Robert Street with his friends, while listening to the latest R&B hits and playing the dozens. That's friendly insults that usually exclude mamas. Between rolls of the dice and smoking cool menthol cigarettes while passing the bottle of Wild Irish Rose or Thunderbird or Mad Dog 2020 wine is MD 2020 from Morgan David Wine, the true name that someone old enough would go into the bar and buy for them in exchange for a swig or two of the cheap wine. There would be other groups of teenagers singing under the alley streetlight, like they were the next David Ruffin or Eddie Kendricks. Teenage life in the hood was about fun, not monsters in the rain who turns youthful innocence into something heinously pornographic. This was Gerald's 19-year-old normal Friday night life. 10:35 p.m. The siblings are walking home, slowly in the rain, wearing their hooded, bright canary yellow rain slickers across Landvale Street, only to stop and play around the Francis Scott Key landmarked monument, and laughing and talking about the concert and which act was best. Times in segregated Baltimore for lots of Negro children did not seem so bad, because they lived in a world protected by the Negro adults from the actual racial strife their parents went through daily. Hard-working colored adults were still treated as less than a man or woman, or lacking intelligence. Men dealt with being called boy, or worse. Our women were fallaciously stereotyped as oversexed and screwed anything in pants, anytime, anywhere. Unless the Negro children lived in the corn, tobacco, and cotton-picking country, or violent segregated South, for the most part, they were sheltered from those realities. For lots of born and raised in the city, Negro children life was about having fun and creating memories. Tonight, fun memories for these 3 children will become horrid nightmares. In a short distance is the figure of a man walking at a slow pace in their direction, while they continue their young stride and cheerful walk toward the 1800 block of Utah Place. From a distance, in the now heavy downpouring rain, he looks almost ghostly, like he's a will-o'-the-wisp. Aside from his total dark attire, the streetlights gleamed off of his black and hooded rain gear. His wet slicker shined in the semi-lit urban darkness. An evil glow beamed around the shape of a featureless man, walking still at a slow pace in the direction of the children, who are oblivious of the impending danger walking toward them, that is ready to engulf them like an inescapable fog. The rain excites Gerald's younger siblings, who are jumping onto rain puddles to splash one another, when suddenly within a few feet from the three varying in age young people, a faceless, colorless stranger, like Claude Rains' Invisible Man portrayal in 1933, without the bandages, stands solidly like a near 7-foot rock in front of them, with a pistol pointed at Gerald. Then without warning, out of the dark, there is a quick flash of light from the gun muzzle and nearly unheard screams of the two younger siblings from loud storming rain, acting as nature's muffler to the terrified wails of a 12-year-old boy and his 15-year-old sister. At the sight of their 19-year-old brother, thrown at least a foot backwards before hitting the ground and banging his head hard and cracking it like an egg on the concrete sidewalk. The splashing blood mixed with the rainwater looked like a mixed drink without a glass. Gerald never knew what hit him. As far as the three obvious living people can tell, Gerald is D. Oh, a dead on arrival. Harold and Sheila do not have a ghost of a chance to escape the hulking figure without a face, who immediately swarms them, and with a few massive punches to the heads of a young boy and girl, they were down for the count. And the rain eliminates a witness to an event on a public street full of apartment buildings with large, curtainless windows. Silence speaks loudly and above the loud Friday night rainstorm. Only the rain is left to bear witness, but will never tell. It is 11:00 p.m. Do you know where your children are? A future PSA, but appropriate now. Friday, January 13, 1967, WJZ TV, Baltimore, Maryland. It is Friday, April 10, 1964, 2:35 p.m. George and Helen Harris, along with their pastor, are at the medical examiner's office at the University of Maryland Hospital, accompanied by detectives O'Brien and Kelsey. They had been there about 15 minutes when the ME comes into the viewing area with a sheet-covered gurney. The expression of fear and desperation shouted in a whisper from the lips of Helen. God help us. Please, don't let it be Angela. We need her here with us. Please, God, take me, not my baby. Please, God, please, not my baby. The pastor squeezes her hand in support and silent prayer. Then what seemed like slow motion in real time, the ME lowers the sheet, and as quick as lightning, Helen screams the scream of a banshee, and tears flow rapidly down her face, along with snot that bubbles out of her nose like a child's bubble maker. George looks like a man in shock. His silence and heavy, rapid breathing are overtaken by a sudden chest grab and series of rapid grunts, and he falls unconsciously to the floor. His eyes are rolled back in his head, showing non-blinking pupils. His breathing is shallow and faint. Helen shouts fearfully after a loud plaintive wail. George, honey, get up, baby, please. George, don't you die on me too. Please, George. Me and our other children need you. Please wake up, baby. Please, baby, don't you die. Then she shouts, Angie, please, baby, make your daddy wake up. Wake him up, baby. We love you, baby, and always did in life. And we will even more when we see you again in heaven. But your brothers can't lose you, Linda and Daddy too. Please, Angie, kiss him and wake Daddy up like you used to do when he fell asleep in the living room chair. Please, baby, ask God not to take Daddy now. An emergency medical team with a crash cart are feverishly working to save George, who had both a heart attack and a stroke as it would be diagnosed later. Suddenly, a nurse exclaimed a sound of medical relief when she shouts, "We have heart rhythm." Then a doctor shouts an order, "Quick, get him to the OR, stat." Helen drops to her knees while crying uncontrollably, both tears of joy for the hope that George survives, and an unmeasurable sadness for the loss of both of her daughters. That sadness was heightened by Angela's obvious wounds, and the news her 12-year-old virgin daughter was vaginally raped and sodomized, tortured for what may have been hours or days. For all anyone knows, according to a grief-stricken Helen looking for anyone to lash out at. It is made more understandable after the insensitive remarks Detective Kelsey made as George was whisked away to the OR. Detective Kelsey remarked with a chuckle how lucky George was, because he said he thought George bit the bullet and went to colored heaven, or maybe colored hell, to visit his kids. He spoke with more now than a chuckle, but an outright insensitive laugh in his voice. Before Helen could react, verbally or physically, Detective Kelsey's partner, Detective O'Brien, intervened and openly chastised Kelsey while apologizing to Helen and the pastor. Helen and her pastor leave the morgue and take the elevator upstairs to the hospital chapel to mourn Angela and pray for George. According to their family faith, Angela is with God in heaven. Be happy for her. Now her suffering is over. And thank God for Angela's torment and pain and fear is eternally gone, and only joy and happiness remain. Helen says to those around her who came to support her and George, faith can create miracles, except for the sadness and mourning, which came free. The Harris family have nothing left but faith. Angela and Linda paid that tab. It is Saturday, April 11, 1964, 8:17 a.m. The all-day and night Friday rain created a cool and soggy Saturday morning, but the sun is trying to cut through the morning haze. The surroundings are full of mud, rocks, stones, dead grass, and leaves. In the not-too-far-away distance, the loud sound of rushing water can be heard and accompanied by a very loud sound of a perpetual spill. Like Angela, Harold and Sheila have no clue about their location either. Angela was tortured and murdered within 5 or 6 hours of her abduction. Harold and Sheila have been forced to endure more than 8 hours of pain and sexual humiliation. While for the faceless giant under a black hood, his night is far from over, even though the sun has been awake for over an hour. The hulking shape who within a year will accept the media-given name, the Phantom. The inhuman monster is also evolving as a sadist. His continued torture and the type and gravity of his sadism on these 2 children is a testament to his perversion. He's an evil incarnate, born to inflict pain and terror on all that fall under his shadow of malevolence. The Negro children of Baltimore are under that inundating shadow. The pain and torture the featureless shape have imposed onto Harold and Sheila is near incomprehensible. Both children have been raped and sodomized multiple times over the night. He forced the siblings to have sex with each other, vaginally, anally, and orally. The children, who from the second they encountered the monster, Harold and Sheila have been living on the threshold of death and in utmost fear. The children know they will soon die and die violently. For the featureless shape, his multifold reasoning on what he does next to render pain and fear is out of the mind of a madman. After the multiple rapes, he stabs them with deep penetration using an ice pick. His stabs were not done to kill, but to inflict lots of pain. He ferociously stabs them in the arms, hands, legs, and feet. This torturous repetition unfolds deathly slow in the rain that turns overnight to drizzle until there is nothing but damp, cool air near dawn, when he really has plans to hurt them, really bad. Harold and Sheila are in the wooded area of Jones Falls, near Biddle Street near the Fallsway. The trees, ditches, and gullies are enough to keep the murderous activities hidden from the eyes and ears of sane people who may be close by. The pounding waterfalls, rushing creek water, and the traffic and expressway construction noise make the sound of screams hard to hear. And it is even harder to pinpoint a direction to where it originated, which for the featureless shape makes what he's about to do for his pleasure an easy decision. The featureless, shape-bound Harold, 12, and his 15-year-old sister, Sheila, to wooden chairs with razor wire. The blood trails ran all over their nude bodies to muffle the sorrowful cries, screams, and pleads of the children. He reaches into his pocket, and with a flick of his wrist, a very shiny and dangerously sharp razor is now in his left hand. The devil's hand. And with that hand, and a hard punch to Harold's jaw to force his mouth open, his left hand cuts off Harold's tongue. Tears flow from the child's eyes, and gurgling moans and pleas from his blood-filled mouth. As if that heinous act was not more than enough, the featureless hooded shape of an inhuman, heartless man uses his straight razor again, only this time he slices completely off Harold's eyelids. Harold, without the ability to blink, agonizingly sees things that would make the child close his eyes in fear. For the 12-year-old Harold, unfortunately, can no longer hide in the blind darkness of closed eyes. If only he could. The poor, tormented child is forced to watch his 15-year-old sister Sheila, who, until this horrific rainy night and distressful start of a new day, his sister, Sheila, had never even seen a man's dick. In her last hours of life, her first and only experience came from a murdering rapist who forced his member into every orifice of her body. For the virgin Sheila, it was not pleasurable and loving. After his self-gratifying sexual perversive acts with a boy and a girl child, he razor-wired Sheila, naked and embarrassingly vulnerable for children growing up in a no-nudity culture. The featureless shape is fixated fondling 15-year-old Sheila's already womanly-sized breast. He squeezes both razor-wired flesh, torn and bleeding breast, and with tenderness, he kisses and licks them with a reptile-like flicking tongue. His lips slowly and with gentleness pulls and suck at her nipples until they stand firm in his mouth. Then, with a craven passion, he ravages her with sharp teeth. Monster-like teeth that totally bites off both of her nipples and eats them cannibalistically, along with eating large chunks of flesh ripped away from each breast. Once not long ago, a 15-year-old girl showed off in the Booker T. Washington Junior High School girls' locker room, boasting about she had the breast of a grown-up woman around her junior high school girlfriends, breasts that are no longer enticing thanks to a madman. Then the inhuman monster chews her torn flesh with a loud lip-popping noise, like a person with very bad eating etiquette. Again, without missing a beat, the monster hacks off her tongue and slices away her eyelids. All while Harold is unable to not see the live pornographic horror show, starring his sister Sheila and a madman. Bound and bloody, and in an unmeasurable level of pain, but far from death, Sheila only prays for death to come and take her. Death has its own schedule of when it arrives. Although death hasn't touched the soul of Harold, 12, and his now almost unrecognizable older sister without eyelids and nude. Through his pain, he is embarrassed that she sees him the same way. while the severely wounded siblings think most about never seeing their mother again and visions on instant replay of seeing their brother, George, shot and killed. Although the siblings are suffering without tongues to speak or eyelids to hide in the dark, they are not dead, but death is in the neighborhood. The faceless shape has the two siblings razor-wired to two wooden chairs that face each other so they can unavoidably watch one another's torment. The monster is about to leave his calling card by signing his handiwork with his burning hot brand, which is a large K. That first is seared into Harold's upper right side of his chest. Then he follows up and burns the large single Chi onto Sheila's right breast. Her bloody, tongueless mouth emulates to the best of her ability the sound of mournful and mercy screams. Even if she could with a tongue scream, it's unlikely anyone would hear her, and without a doubt, the monster wouldn't give a damn. And carved onto their foreheads are the numbers 2 and Sheila 3. Angela was number 1. Linda and Gerald did not count in his perverse game of death. It is Sunday, April 12, 1964, 3:17 a.m. It is 3 hours into a new day. The featureless shape spent for himself, relaxing after he branded the Bethel children his relaxing was. He raped both Harold and Sheila repeatedly throughout the day, and as a part of his relaxation, he raped them with tree branches. But now it is time, he thinks, to kill them and go back to the hunt. He gets up from an area in the woods. He chose to be alone and walks toward an area where the Bethel children are tied with razor wire and slowly dying. The monster in his final acts of depravity, before ending the final moments of 2 young lives that never had opportunity to grow and live. The monster opens their mouths and pours several scoops of dirt and mud, leaves, broken twigs, and stones into their mouths and down their throats until they gag and choke. Then Harold Bethel, 12, and his sister Sheila Bethel, 15, painfully and not quickly enough, begin a death twitch. Convulsions. The Bethel siblings die. But that is not enough for the featureless shape. The children are dead, but he still hangs them from a tree. He leaves a note, scratched into a rock between them, that ominously said,
This is a dead nigger tree. There will be more. The rain is starting again, and I need to hunt more baby nigras.
He does something this time which says to police he is what in 1964 they called a pattern killer, but they had no clue what the FAGs mean or why.
This is one of many historical updates. Metropolitan Theater opened on December 16, 1922 with Elaine Hammerstein in One Week of Love. It had a seating capacity of 1,450, 900 in the orchestra and 550 in the balcony. It was designed by architect Otto G. Simonson. The original entrance was on the corner of Pennsylvania Avenue and West North Avenue. This was closed off in 1947. The building also held a bowling alley, a large billiard room on the second floor, and 6 retail units. Warner Brothers purchased the Metropolitan Theater in 1925 as a first-run outlet for their movies. It was the first movie theater in the area to screen the early talkies Don Juan and the Jazz Singer. Warner Brothers moved out of the theater in 1937 and it was taken over by the Rome Theaters chain. In 1947 it was refurbished, and in March 1949 it was operating as a first-run African-American movie theater. The Metropolitan Theater was closed on July 26, 1977 and was demolished in 1978 to construct the Penn North subway station. I'm Nancy. In an era, this is an important historical note. Of strict segregation, here, politicians made toasts, Sam Cooke sang, and comedian Red Fox got belly laughs. Musicians enjoyed playing at the Sphinx because of its personal atmosphere, said Rosa Pryor Trusty, a former music promoter who booked shows at the club. It was like a private home away from home. Everybody knew each other, she said, and if they didn't, they soon became friends. In its heyday, the club made more than $1 million a year. Archives, farewell to the Sphinx Club. But its founder, who died in 1988, had grown up dirt poor in East Baltimore, recalled his grandson. He didn't have a formal education like high school or a college degree, Tillman said, but he was an economic genius. His training happened on the job. He worked at a famous bar in East Baltimore, the Club Ambassador. It was a hot club back in the day, Tillman said. The Ambassador's proprietor mentored the young Tillman, teaching him the ins and outs of the nightclub business. He even helped him buy a building of his own on Pennsylvania Avenue, where Tillman opened the Club Manhattan in 1941. Black Baltimore could enjoy the avenue, as residents called the Pennsylvania Avenue Corridor, with its lounges, theaters and clubs. No place shone brighter than the Sphinx, the preferred spot for politicians, judges, lawyers and other black professionals. Today, the building in the 2100 block of Pennsylvania Avenue has boards covering door and window frames. But it was once the Sphinx, the members-only nightclub that for decades was the place to see and be seen for Black Baltimore. It was a really classy place to be, said Charles R. Tillman, who spent many days of his youth in the club founded by his grandfather, Charles P. Tillman, who opened it in 1946. Men removed their hats while women wore diamonds and furs. That day and era is just about gone, recalled Tillman. Tillman wants to make sure the city remembers it. He carries with him a photo album documenting the club's history and a key card that members used to open the door. Last fall, he held an event to honor his grandfather's legacy. Mayor Brandon Scott, whose grandparents were regulars, attend. I'm Nancy.
Although Joyce Bethel was only a head bartender, it was at the most prestigious and cloud-slinging nightclub in Baltimore for the Negro elite, and Joyce was very well liked and respected by both men and women, and now her two youngest children have been found tortured, raped, and lynched in the woods of Jones Falls near Biddle Street with symbols of something that may be signs of Satanists below their bodies. A fact the BCPD did not want known, but it got out, and when you mix Satan and God-fearing Negro Christians, there's going to be hell to pay. I'm the Whisperer.